My name is Chris. Sometimes it feels like I don't exist anymore. I live on the edge of an old town, in a house I once built with my own hands, brick by brick, rafter by rafter. Now this place is more like a museum of memories, where everything is covered in dust and silent as loudly as I am. The tables are empty. The walls are sterile from sound. Only the clock ticks mockingly accurately. My children are busy. Always. Successful, ambitious, polite in public, but when I call, there are unanswered rings, and in messages. Dad, later. Important now. My granddaughter sent me an emoji for Christmas. Granddaughter. Emoji. It was the only gift I got, if you don't count the bottle of wine I bought myself, which I still haven't opened. I'm not complaining. I'm the kind of person who swallows everything in silence. But with each passing day, something inside me rots. Not the body, the soul. It is corroding from the inside, like an old beam in a damp foundation. In the store, the young cashier doesn't even look me in the eye. She hands me change without touching it as if I were the plague. It annoys me. In the hospital, they cut me off mid-sentence. They said, "Your age, Grandpa, is normal." This is not normal. What hurts me is not age. It is the cry of the body, which no one listens to anymore. I know my schedule by heart. 7 o'clock wake up. 8 o'clock breakfast for one. 10 o'clock the store. 12 o'clock pills. 1400 hours a short walk with empty eyes. 1800 hours dinner in silence. 2000 hours television that laughs at its own jokes. 2200 hours a bed that smells of loneliness. I seem to be alive, but inside me there is an emptiness so thick that I want to scream. But I don't scream. I listen. I remember. Recently I started writing in an old diary. The pages still smell of leather. There I leave not my thoughts but facts. September 12th. Alexei, my son, raised his voice. He called me an old grumbler. October 3rd. Grandson Artem. Grandpa, we have a different generation you don't understand. October 7th. In the queue at the pharmacy, a girl asked me to give in because you are always here anyway. I remember everything. Not the emotion, the event. This is important. There is still a sparkle in my eyes. Not the one that was there at 40, when I was making deals for millions, but the one that remains in a wolf that has been cornered. He hasn't yet torn. But he already sees who threw the stone and from where. And do you know what is the scariest thing? I no longer miss. I no longer hope. I begin to think. I wasn't always a shadow. People didn't just listen when I spoke, they fell silent, so as not to miss a single word. I started in a garage where there wasn't even electricity. Hands in fuel oil, lungs in dust. Business wasn't made of gifts. I didn't have any startup capital, but I had character. At 33, I sold my first technical development. At 35, I was already opening offices. At 40, I was known in all ministries. But that wasn't the main thing. I was a father, not just a financier. I remember holding Alexei, my son, on my shoulders when he was afraid of thunder. And then when he was afraid of exams, I helped. I protected. I invested everything, time, resources, heart. Even after my wife died, I remained a wall. I didn't waver for a moment. When my family was sick, I spent the night in hospitals. When someone failed, I pulled them along. I was the one to lean on. They took an example from me. I was feared by my competitors. They loved me, so I thought. And now, when I remember it, it all seems like a dream. I am sitting in the same room where there used to be loud dinners, the smell of roast, the laughter of my grandchildren. Now, just an old chair that creaks more than they talk to me. Alexei, my proud boy, now heads the sales department in a large corporation. But one day I called, just to talk. His voice was official, short, like a template from a meeting. "Dad, I can't right now. Come on later." This, later, has been going on for 3 years. And my grandson Artem once told me, "Now is a different time, grandfather. You lived in your own era. Now is a different game." And do you know what I felt then? No, not resentment. Cold. For the first time in a long time, a cold that is not cured by a blanket. My home was once a fortress. Now it's a crypt of memory. I walk through rooms I know by heart, but which I no longer recognize. The world has changed. And I forgot to thank. I forgot to whom I owe my existence. Sometimes it seems to me that all my efforts are like a house on sand. Everything I built has dissolved into indifference. But I don't feel sorry for myself. I just remember. I see how the world despises old age. How youth considers wisdom to be weakness. How experience is what is no longer relevant. And I understand. No one cares about the past if it doesn't hurt. But I will make it hurt. There is a moment when the pain no longer hurts. It just becomes the background. Like a slight whistling in the ears after an explosion. That's how I live now, inside a silent hum, where you no longer expect warmth, but you still notice the cold. I don't talk to Alexei anymore. Last month he came only because he needed a power of attorney. He didn't even ask how I was. He said, "Sign here." And then, as if throwing me a bone, "Well, how are you here?" I was silent. I watched him hurry back to the car, not even waiting for an answer. All that remained after him was the smell of perfume and the feeling that I was no longer a father. I signed. My granddaughter, Marta, came over one day with a boyfriend. They were sitting in the kitchen while I made tea. I heard her say, "He always seemed a little scary to me. He's a quiet guy. An old guy." And her boyfriend replied, laughing, "Nothing. There'll be another grandfather soon." I dropped the cup. They fell silent. Not out of respect, but out of inconvenience. I simply went to my room. Diary entry. Martha. September 21st. Not afraid of death, because she finds it convenient. At the hospital, they stopped listening to me. The young doctor said, "At your age, it's normal. Blood pressure, heart, everything is logical." I asked, "What if it's something serious?" He didn't even look up. "You're not the first. You're not the last. Let's prescribe a standard set." A set? Like in a cafe. I'm a template. Not a person. Not a story. Not an experience. Just a standard situation. Diary entry. Dr. Constantine. October 2nd. Got used to corpses before people. And then, there was a scene that cracked something deeper in me than a bone. I was leaving the store. In my hands were 2 packages. Ordinary things. Bread, milk, medicine. It was slippery. I lost my balance and fell. Right onto the asphalt. The packages fell apart. The oranges rolled. I looked up. 2 teenagers were filming it on their phones. "Look, Grandpa is crash testing the tile." One of them laughed. I held out my hand. A gesture not of request, but of despair. And then laughter. Not angry. Worse. Light. Indifferent. I don't remember how I got up. I don't remember how I got home. But I remember that look. That sound of laughter that cut me off from everything human. At home, I undressed slowly. Every movement hurt. But something inside no longer hurt at all. It was quiet. Too quiet. But this silence was no longer loneliness. It was waiting. That evening, I opened a new chapter in my diary. Not names. Not dates. but formulas, logical connections, behavioral patterns. Who gets hurt when something collapses? Who hides what? Where is the weak spot in the family, the system, the character? This was no longer a list of insults. This was a plan. I wasn't going to scream. I was going to play. I thought the loudest sound in life was a human scream. But I was wrong. The loudest sound is your own silence, when a decision is born in it. After that day on the street, everything became strangely clear. The world around me didn't change, but I managed to change. Not suddenly. It wasn't a rush. It wasn't an explosion. It was the slow opening of eyes that had long seen everything but hadn't focused. I returned home, and for the first time didn't sit in a chair to feel sorry for myself. I simply stopped in the middle of the room and looked at it, the walls that heard more than anyone else, the photos that no longer looked at me, the blanket that never warmed, only reminding me that others had long ago taken their warmth from this house. I didn't feel humiliation. I didn't feel shame. I didn't even feel resentment. I felt the absence of pain. And it was scarier than anything that had come before. My diary was lying on the kitchen table. Not the old one, in a leather cover. I'm saving that one for the finale. In front of me is a notebook with no memories. Only schemes, structures, facts, human weaknesses, addictions, debts, secrets that they all forgot about long ago, but not me. I know a lot. I've never been an emotional fool who leaves life to chance. I've always had duplicate documents, connections, contacts, hints, backup channels. I was a businessman not only on paper. I was an architect of decisions and downfalls. From those times, people remained forgotten, gray, silent. They no longer shine in official databases, but exist outside of them. And they remember me. Not with love. Not with friendship. With respect that words can't buy. I didn't call anyone on the first day. At first I watched. Alexei started investing money in the wrong places. His partner is a slippery, greedy person. I knew about him back in 2001, when he robbed someone else's holding company's warehouse. Marta is dating a guy who already has a second girlfriend. He recently explained to someone on the phone how he cashes out gifts for officials. Arthur is a cousin, a gambler, and has a debt. He's been called 3 times this week. Each time the voice was less polite. I wasn't gloating. I just saw their vulnerability. And then an amazing moment happened. I got a call. Not my children. Not my family. A person from my past. A man I pulled out of a situation that would have cost him everything. And he hadn't forgotten. There was just no reason to show up. Chris? The voice is old, worn out by time, but there was still a touch of respect in it. A long time ago I answered. You remembered me, he said, as if he hadn't asked. I don't forget anyone. And you won't forget yourself now, he said. Say what you need to. And then I understood. I'm no longer alone. I'm invisible. But not alone. I don't take revenge with a scream. I don't take revenge with a fist. I remember. And I plan. The silence of my house has changed. Now it's not emptiness. It's an operating room. Cold. Prepared. Functional. I don't want to take anyone's life. I want them to see for themselves what they've lost. And for it to hurt them, the way they believed I was no longer capable of feeling. Not quickly. Not sharply. Methodically. Because the most terrible predator is not the one who roars. It's the one whom have you forgotten to fear. And they have forgotten me. There's a strange feeling when you wake up one day and realize that you're no longer the person you went to bed with. Not because something changed in the world, but because someone inside you turned on the light. A dark light. I didn't want to be heard anymore. I wanted to be felt. Not just names appeared in my diary. Connections between names appeared. Who owes whom? Who is afraid of whom? Who depends on whose decision, money or reputation? Family. Former partners. Neighbors, acquaintances. Old friends. Business opponents. All these threads, I've seen them before. I just haven't pulled them before. I called only 3 people. And each of them answered, "I'm listening," with the same intonation, in which there was no emotion or surprise, only readiness. One of them once solved the problem quietly, quickly, and without cameras. The second one disappeared from sight about 15 years ago, but I knew where to find him. The third one wasn't a friend, but he owed me a debt that I never paid. Until today. I didn't ask any of them to do anything with their hands. Only to find paths. To push. To eavesdrop. To deliver a letter. To lose a file. The children didn't even notice when accidents started happening to them. Alexei got a performance check because of a report that should have been destroyed long ago, but suddenly was found. In that report were his partner's mistakes. The partner came out clean, and Alexei began to be kept at a distance. For the first time in many years, he called me not to talk, but to vent his irritation. I listened silently. He hung up. I smiled, not with my lips, with my eyes. Marta and her grandson Artem had a fight over money. She found out that he had borrowed a considerable sum from someone to whom you shouldn't lend. I've known this since December. I just waited until April. Their family friend suddenly made it clear that paying back the debt was not a matter of good manners. She started calling her mother, then her father, and then, guess who else? I didn't answer. I just put the phone on the table and let it ring until the end. The doctor who ignored me received a complaint. Not directly, through specialized channels that are not visible to the public. One signature disappeared there. There was a question about his license. I didn't do anything criminal. I simply reminded the world that it was fragile. I didn't break the system. I made them look in the mirror, their own, not mine. I was no longer scared by their indifference. Indifference is weakness, if you know where to press. Every night, the silence in the house changed. It became work-like, meaningful, almost friendly. I laid out my notes, like a general lays out cards before an attack. Without haste, without chaos, without anger. Anger is the tool of the weak. Cold calculation is the weapon of the underestimated. I didn't want anyone to cry or apologize. I wanted them to finally see that I'm not a shadow, that my absence is also an action, that my silence is not a defeat, but a space where solutions mature. And most importantly, none of them yet realize that this is only the beginning, because I haven't touched the deepest. I've only knocked on the door that they close behind me. The real game will begin then, when they finally ask not, "What's going on?" but, "Who did it?" And then I'll wait a little longer. Let them find the answer themselves. Let them feel for themselves that they weren't laughing at weakness, but at a predator who was just lying there watching. They still can't hear me. But now they're afraid of not hearing me. My house has remained the same walls, the same smell of old books, the same creaky chair. But the feelings are different. Subscribe and like, and send the video to your friends.